Now what I want to do is try to cover 40 years in about 6 or 7 minutes. And as you can imagine, that's just going to be hitting some of the high points of things that happen. So we'll try to race through this. Most of us here probably know the story of Keith being raised up in Los Angeles. He was born in a family. His father was a co-founder of World Vision, co-founder of Youth for Christ. He was involved in setting up the early Billy Graham crusades. So Keith grew up in that kind of a background. When he was 14 years old, he preached his first sermon at First Baptist of Van Nuys. Thousands of people there. So you could see that gifting already there. Started the Bible Club ministry in Watts when he was still in his late teens, early 20s. And there were 4 things that came together, really 4 individuals in our ministry here in Wichita that are, as I look back, are really quite remarkable. First of all was Dr. Roy Just at Tabor College. Roy had heard about what Keith was doing in the Los Angeles area. Invited him to be the commencement speaker when Keith was all of 23 years of age. And the next year we had 50 students driving to Wichita every Saturday teaching Bible clubs. That was pre-World Impact. That was in 1970 when that Bible club ministry. So that was one thing, Roy Just. The second was Dale Workington. Wave your hand, Dale. Dale at the time was pastor of First MB Church here in Wichita. And Dale set up the first 5 Bible club areas that we began. Then they went on to the Philippines, Indonesia, and now we're back in Wichita. But God used Dale in a significant way in the church. In fact, I lived with them the summer when I was in college for part of the summer, when their church hosted our summer staff. The third person, George Fouché, right over here. George, wave your hand. And I like this one because George was part of a prayer group. And they were praying for the inner city, that God would really do something. And then you've all heard the story, praying for a house that I could move into when I graduated from college. And if I got it right, you prayed that that would happen when Keith was still in town. And that prayer group was very significant. Then the 4th person is right back there, Lemoyne. Wave your hand. Lemoyne and her husband, Lauren, who's gone on to be with the Lord, were working in the Still area for 5-6 years. Prior to that time, had a flourishing ministry in there. We're looking for someone that could take that over. And God used these 4 individuals to bring together something that began our ministry, many other things. Obviously, churches that were a part of it. Well, we started that at the Still House, soon got a house right next to it. And before long, there were 8-10 guys from the community that were living in that house. One day I get a call that there's a group of people that wanted to come by from this church called Eastminster to see what was going on. And Fred Barrett was in that group that came. Phyllis Kick back there, her husband Frank Kick was a pastor, new minister at Eastminster. He's gone on to be with the Lord, but he was part of that group. They came walking in his house. Now I was impressed with the house, but as I look back, I said, now, what must that have looked like? So we had holes in the walls from all the wrestling matches, guys getting thrown through walls, windows broken. We had a ping pong table that was in the living room, and one couch, raggedy couch. Somehow they sat around there, and I was all impressed with what was going on. And in God's good fortune, they didn't think we were going completely off the cliff, maybe. And that led to our first board forming. Dan Peniston, others that were part of that board. Well, God put together a very significant board. Roger Fredrickson also showed up one day at our house. And key leaders in the churches, in the business community, you know, we were all in our young 20s. Fred Stace, who you all see on a video a little bit, he was 19 when he moved into Los Angeles. We were all young, in our early 20s. And so it's to have these individuals, First Baptist, the churches, Eastminster, First Free, First MD, all these churches that got behind us. And they endorsed the ministry. And those were the beginning days of board form. We needed another house for our ladies to live in, our single women. And a house was provided on North Spruce. And Aline Ratzlaff, wave their hand here. Aline moved in that house with some others, became our women's director, and had a flourishing ministry of discipleship over many, many years. Then we got another house on Volusia. I moved a block away. Don and Beth moved in the Estelle house. And I was thinking, I believe you were the first family, other than Keith and Katie, on staff who will move that. Wow. The first family. That was a big deal. Well, then, all of a sudden they had a baby, Matthew, who is now with the Lord. But I'm not quite sure if our entire staff was in the delivery room with you all. But we were so much family that it felt like more than a nephew. It was more than, it was family. First families on staff. And God was laying a foundation. Don told me, Don became the director when I started doing regional work. And he said, because he took track of numbers in ways I never did, but that we had 250 kids in Bible clubs and 100 teenagers at one time. Now, imagine this. The meeting place for them were our homes and the backyards. You'd have a home, and the front room was 7 to 9 girls club. The kitchen was 4 to 6-year-old club, and this bedroom was 10 to 12 girls, and and the boys were outside. They got stuck outside, other than the little ones. And in the winter, we'd line up the vans and the cars, and they'd be started to keep people warm. We'd have clubs in the cars. Throughout the week, hundreds of kids that were in these clubs. And then along came the ranch in 1981. And Jim was a part of that group that went, and we'll hear from him in a bit. And the ranch began. We were praying for maybe an 8 or 10 acre place where we could bring guys from the city. And we ended up in a 560 acre ranch, scratching our heads and saying, oh my lands, look what just happened. And God began bringing guys from all over the country there. And we had summer camps. And we had a 72 passenger bus. And we'd load that bus and pack it full and have every van we could borrow from churches and whatever, hauling all these kids out to Tent City. Because we didn't have facility. We set up tents. And we only had outhouses. We had some accidents, other than scraped knees at those camps. But summer camp became the highlight of the year for these kids. Then we had so many people that had accepted Christ, and adults, and Don, through his great vision, we formed the first celebration. We didn't want to call it church at first because it might look too churchy. But we called it Celebration, and it met in the Volusia house. And in time, we had an area about like this where Don could stand and preach, and the rest was packed in like you couldn't believe. People going up the stairs, the kitchen, sometimes the door open, people outside the door. That started the beginning of the church plant vision. That's led to where it has today. I said in 1986, we got this place. And John Arnold, Marlon Penner were involved in the ranch, this place, all of our homes that we got. We were praying for a place to have a teen center because we had so many teens. And we ended up with an 11-acre, 88-unit apartment complex. No idea the current things that are going on would happen here. we just needed a place for our teens. There's a big open field, there's a basketball court, swimming pool, and we were thinking teens. And God had some other things in mind as well. In 1986, after we got this place, Richard Spann, Dr. Spann, called me out one day. He said, have you ever thought of a clinic? And that led to the Good Samaritan Clinic starting. Now we have the mobile clinic outside. Some of you that haven't been through it, you might want to take a look at that afterwards. That's operating. This was a huge room. It wasn't partitioned off like this. This big room was sleepover place for teens on weekends. It was church on Sunday morning. It was teen class on Tuesday and Thursday night, and many other things during the week. And then someone had the idea, I don't know if it was the Emmaus ladies, that we could maybe have some garage sales because we'd have so much stuff given to us. And so we began garage sales in here. And before long, 2 days a week, this would be completely packed out. This entire building, hundreds of people would come and shop for items, and that led to our 2 stores. The Second Blessing store and the other store in 13th and Waco. By Their Love began in the mid-90s through the leadership of Pat Smith. And that led to a daycare center being started. And single moms and their kids were ministered to. Then Fred and Jolene showed up. And Jack and Bonnie, who are here from Nebraska with us. And Darren and Matt and a whole bunch of people came to start 5 church plants. At one time we started 5 church plants and watched God work through that. And then the Lord led Don and Beth back on our staff in the mid-90s, along with Terry and Julie. And it reminded me of 20 years earlier. We'd hear these loud debates going on here. And 20 years earlier, they were having those same debates. You know, how do you train leaders in the city? And that led to the Urban Institute starting. And we don't have time to tell all of that's going on, but we now have 79 extension sites in this country and around the world. Don said 1,000 students now in training. Who would have ever figured that would come? We began a process here in town called CAP, and that's led by Andy Enns. He became the director of human resources, one element of it within World Impact National. So now all the new missionaries get interviewed here in Wichita, a very significant ministry that he leads. And then in these last years, all these partnerships that are beginning with groups in this country around. I think of all the directors we've had 5 Wichita directors. Kent Hobbs back there, Joe Graham was at 4 times, Don, had 5 directors here, 5 or 6 at the range. So all these years, God has been faithful. And so when I look out among this group here, I just say, praise the Lord. Thank you, every one of you, those that have been on work crews, that have built homes, that have mowed yards for us, volunteers that have worked in the stores. Al Bergens were here, it became so much a part of things in the early years. And just, you know, I could tell a story with every road going back here. So thank you, everyone. Now let's enjoy some slides that Matt and Amber and a few others put together that showed these last years.